Welcome my friends, this is Maniacal Incorporated and this is Starground, an automation optimization, Factorio-like, Dyson Sphere-light indie that's coming out in the next few days from Big Boy Games. And I'm going to leave up some footage in the background as I get some ingot production set up. So I have a biofuel production automated-ish at the moment, and I'm getting a few things set up. But what I'm going to do is I'm going to go off at a bit of a tangent for a few moments. Weather Factory is a studio that I follow, big fan of their games, really enjoyed Book of Hours recently. Cultist Simulator was the first game that I put up on the Maniacal Inc channel when I was trying to figure out how all this YouTube malarkey worked a couple of years ago. And the crazed geniuses behind the studio, Alexis Kennedy and Lottie Bevan, they have a series on YouTube at the moment called Weather Report, where they look at upcoming indie titles and they use a number of publicly available metrics, like the number of wish lists that a game has and its social media traction, to predict how many reviews it's going to have at the end of the first week. And this is a measure, basically, of how well the game has performed. And the reason I mention this is because this is how I found out about Starground. It was featured in the most recent weather report, and it did not do well. Now again, it's worth noting that they don't play the games, they're not basing their opinions off of playing the demo or anything like that. It's purely the available metrics. Numbers of wish lists is a big one that they often mention. They'll talk about traction on social media. There's a number of other different factors that play into their predictions, but they found that Starground wasn't doing great under those various metrics. Alexis predicted just 20 reviews at the end of week 1 for Starground, and Lottie said that her numbers were coming out at 41 if she was to go off of what her calculations were saying. Now, she predicted the number that she put down was 120. So she felt that, because both of them felt that the game didn't deserve those low numbers. That's what the numbers were coming back with. But they liked the art style. It's in a genre that tends to perform well. Alexis felt that he couldn't see if the game was doing anything differently from many of the other games, similar games in the genre. It does a couple of things differently, and we're going to take a look at those in a few moments. So Lottie went out on a limb and predicted a higher number, but at 20 and 41... those are pretty bad numbers. When you compare them to some of the other games that they were looking at, it's less than some of the bold games that they were looking at.
But for this next game, it's the Porn Bell, the porn that we all know and love.
So they will basically go down through the upcoming games list that Steam shows them, and if they're shown bold games, they will talk about them. And Lottie has to ring a bell to warn young, impressionable minds like myself to look away, that they're about to talk about games which presumably feature animated ladies in various stages of undress. I can only imagine, because thankfully they blur out the images. Now, I really like Weather Report because it's a fascinating insight into the industry, and it's one thing to, we'll say, follow tutorials on how to make games, and indeed the dev for Starground is actually streaming his development of the game. So there's that aspect, and that's what you often think about when you think about the games industry. But there's also people in the back crunching numbers, trying to figure out how well are social media campaigns doing in drawing attention to the game. How many wish lists did we get from doing this? How many wish lists did we get from doing that? How many wish lists did Baldur's Gate 3 get after Astarion and Halsin? Halsin turned into a bear. That was great for the wish list, I'd say. So you get a fascinating insight into the industry, and they have a number of heuristics that they apply when they're looking at how well they think these games are going to do. Alexis has one where if a game has the word zombie in the title, he basically halves his predictions. So whatever number comes back to him, he's going to have it. He feels that zombie games, the genre is kind of saturated at the moment, especially saturated with some not so great games. There are a couple of standouts, Project Zomboid being one of them, but there's a lot of not great games in the genre at the moment, in the zombie genre, as far as that's a genre of game. and that basically it has a depressive effect on sales, which then has a depressive effect on the number of reviews that are left. So, yeah, if this was called Star Zombie, Alexis would have predicted 10 reviews at the end of week 1. Another factor that Alexis believes has a negative impact on a game is if it's going into early access, just like Starground is. He feels that people might wishlist the game, but on its release, there's a good chance that they're going to hold off, that they're going to wait to see some early plays of the games by people, to see what various different streamers think of the full-blown version of the game, what other people who are actually buying the game think of it, or maybe they're going to wait for extra features to be added. So as well as the game coming out on early access, the dev might release a roadmap, and they might see something on the roadmap that they like that's coming 2 months down the line. Well, then we're going to wait for 2 months to actually pick up the game. So that's another factor that Alexis believes has a depressive effect on sales. Lottie will often mention if a game is either maybe Chinese based or if it's coming out with a Chinese translation, because that opens it up to a much greater market than it would have normally if it's just in English, we'll say. So she will often scale up predictions. Whatever numbers come back, she'll scale them up if the game, we'll say, has a Chinese translation. And a factor that she kind of pointed out on the most recent episode was the fake dog factor. Now that's fake dog factor and not a fake dog factor, as in the game has a fake dog. One of the games had a cute dog in it running around, and she felt that maybe people saw the dog, liked the dog, wishlisted the game for the dog, but that many of the people who were wishlisting actually had, when push came to shove, very little intention of buying the game. And I think she actually kind of scaled the predictions down, or reduced the number of predicted reviews based on that. And something that I've been thinking about watching Weather Report for the last couple of weeks is there going to be a weather factory factor? A weather factor, wherein by featuring these games, by addressing these games, and bringing these games to the attention of a wider group of people, Weather Factory impact their own analysis of the game. So it's kind of happened here with Starground. I had not heard of this game before seeing it on Weather Report. I think I had seen it in a couple of different places, but for some reason, I just passed by. There's an interesting question to be had in there. Why exactly did I I won't say dismiss it, but I just kind of passed it by in the big list of games that I see. But it was the fact that it was addressed on Weather Report that made me kind of pay attention to this. And I realized shortly afterwards that I had an opportunity to claim a pre-release version of the game. Now there's a demo of the game up on Steam as well. I don't know if there's much of a difference between the two of them, but I got a pre-release version of the game. And I probably wouldn't have gone... I absolutely 100% would not have gone and gotten this if it wasn't for the fact that I saw it on Weather Report. So I'm really interested to see as the Weather Report grows and grows and grows, and I hope it will grow and grow in weeks to come, because it's interesting to get this kind of insight into, like I said, the workings of the industry and the workings of this side of the industry as they kind of try and figure out how do we get the game out to as many people as possible. I imagine that as well as applying their own heuristics, setting out their stall, saying, I think it's going to get this many reviews, and then coming back after the game has been out for a week and comparing their predictions to the actual number, and if they're spot on, they're spot on. If there's a discrepancy, they explain why they think that discrepancy was there. So it's really interesting to see that analysis. But I'm interested to know if, as Weather Report grows and grows and grows, are we going to see Weather Report actually impacting Weather Report's analysis? So with all that out of the way, let's take a look at Starground and see, is it a game that deserves close to Alexis's predicted figures of 20 reviews, or if it deserves closer to the 120 that Lottie went out on a limb and predicted. So here we are in my current playthrough with some busy buzzy bees flying around. This is the first kind of innovative aspect of the game. If we think of our Factorios, which I've never played, and Dyson Sphere, which I put a good chunk of time into, and a variety of other games like that, you have your resources. There is a resource. There is some iron. We shoot it with the gun. And we have some stone over here. And if we stand here for long enough, that stone is going to disappear. The resources basically appear and disappear. We just saw some coal pop up, and there's some copper that popped up. I do get confused. I would think that's copper. That's iron. There's a tree just appeared, and there is that stone just gone. So in something like your Dyson sphere, what you're going to do is you're going to have an area of resources, and you're going to put down your resource collectors, and over time those resources are going to disappear. What happens here is you need to put down these collectors, and a bee drone is going to come out within its range, and it's going to pick stuff up and bring it back to the collectors. I think that's a pretty neat, innovative idea. You can't bank on getting what you want, so what you need to do is basically keep putting down collectors if you want to cover the largest area and actually try to keep. So you can see that these belts are pretty bare at the moment. There's nothing on them. And you have your basics then. We have a mover which will take something from here. This one, I always do that. I left click, and this one is taking wood and it's putting it onto this conveyor belt, and it's going way over here, and it's eventually making it down into this chest and then down into this crafter, which is currently set to take wood and convert it into biofuel. I'm very proud of this setup. Brings it all the ways up here to the burner, and the burner is generating electricity. Those batteries are dry, so I think we've set up a couple of things that are putting a fairly hefty demand on our electricity system. And then we have Tesla coils. Now, I don't think those are cables. I think it's just indicating that the Tesla coils are connected up, and the Tesla coils are powering everything within a given area. So this Tesla coil is powering that collector and transferring to this one, to these two, and so on. I'm stuck in something. I have to go around the long way. And it's bringing the electricity all the ways over here to these collectors and to the research station. So we have a kind of a, you wouldn't really call it a research tree. I've already researched alloying, which will allow me to build a sword blade. I can get steel and a foundry. So we have a couple of different things here that can be researched. There's an oil rig. So I believe that's probably oil. I actually haven't gotten out to see what I can see just yet. So setting up more burners, getting more advanced forms of electricity so that we can get rid of the burners and maybe instead redivert the biofuel to these furnaces. So this furnace is taking, well, it'll take anything, but what I've been doing is all the iron ore that gets collected comes down here into this furnace. And my next intention would be, this is where all the coal goes to, so you can see there isn't a lot of coal at the moment, but set up a system that would actually feed these furnaces. So I one for coal, one for iron, and one for stone. So the stone, the raw stone comes in and is converted into stone bricks. And the other thing that I need to do is actually set up storage so that the storage will take these. So this got blocked up because it was at 99 bricks. There's our flashlight. As it gets late, we have a bit of a day-night cycle. And of course we can if we want to. And it's what you pretty much have to do at the start, is collect all the resources manually by hand. And the very first things that you will need to do is set up a furnace. And then to start these collectors, you need a slightly more advanced. Let's see if I can find any. A slightly more advanced system. I should also just show off the building menu at the moment. So we have a furnace for creating ingots, a crafter then for converting those ingots into more advanced goods, the collector for actually picking up stuff in an area manually, the foundry, here's our conveyors and the movers, we have the underground conveyors, energy production, and then we have, I suppose, what's this, miscellaneous? So a star launcher, which I'll cover in a second, a tool bench, and a training dummy. But at the start, you're going to just have your furnace. You're going to have your crafter. And 2 iron will give us a cog, which is needed for building collectors. And this is a treadmill. So as I run on the treadmill, that power is going to the Tesla coil. You can see that the Tesla coil is sparking. As I stop running, it stops sparking. And then that energy is going to, I love the little smiley face, going to the crafter, and that's making the cogs. So at the moment, I'm doing this process manually, and then my next goal would be looking to automate that. I don't think I have anything that I can actually make here on the workbench at the moment. This is the last thing that I made, which was a hammer. It's a primitive hammer, and boys oh boys, is it primitive. I did manage to buy a sword handle, and I need to start making steel if I want to make a sword blade. Now, what the hell do you need weapons for in this game? Well, the first thing is for baiting up this dummy. So it's giving you the value 0.9. You can see it's very slow and very laborious to swing, and it's not doing a huge amount of damage, 0.54, so that wasn't great. I have some apple. I have no apples. And I have... That's the one thing, is that the bees don't bring back apples. So you do actually manually have to go and chase down some trees and hope that they will drop apples. There we go. Look at that. I could not have timed that better. So there's an apple. We have coal. We have all the various stuff. And the apples are used to regain your health for when you go to the dungeons. I'll put up a bit of a clip of my trip to the dungeon. I think in the very last tile, I managed to get killed. The hammer works very slowly, and when you swing it, you're basically trapped in place for a few moments. So there are these big robots chasing me around, and I was basically swinging at them and managed to get killed by them. And there's these blue guys going around that slow you down. So that's one of the dungeons that you can go to. You can pick up coins, you can pick up resources, and then the coins can be taken off-world. So that dungeon is off-world. You use the platform that I have next to our burner, the star launcher, to pick where you want to launch to. So you can launch up to the Space Hub, a trade center for the citizens of the solar system, or to a simple moon with a simple dungeon, which insinuates the existence of a complex moon with a complex dungeon. So presumably, as the game continues through early access, more and more parts of the solar system, it's a fairly sparse solar system at the moment, but more and more areas are going to be revealed. And then of course we have Viridian, your base of operations, where we find ourselves. So this has been a short look at Starground, which is coming out in the next week in early access. I should also mention that the game is multiplayer, so when you create your version of Viridian, you can invite people to join you and help you to automate your wood. Very important, and other aspects of your setup. I like where the game is going. I like the idea. I like the vibe. I like the collectors. That's new on me. Maybe other games have done something similar. I like the setup. I like the idea of these little bees going out and picking stuff up. And there seems to be a fairly advanced or a fairly comprehensive system of stuff to research and build. So we have we can get better automation, so better conveyors, splitters, all the normal stuff. You got decorations to decorate the place, and we can get storage. I've done alloying already. The foundry is what's going to make steel, which is needed for these sword blades, which is a better weapon for the dungeons. We can replace a lot of our burning of biofuel with solar panels, and we got the oil processing and stuff like that. And I'm sure as time goes on, more and more is going to be added. So there you go. How do you think this is going to do? Do you think this is going to come out closer to Alexis's predictions of 20 reviews at the end of week 1? Or do you think that Lottie was right to scale up her predictions up to 120. I will be looking forward to checking out the next episode of Weather Report to see how Starground performed in its first week. Thank you very much for joining me on this episode, and I hope to see you again in future.